we can't trust the Food and Drug Administration. The organization's approved drugs have caused severe side effects years after approval. In this video, I'm going to talk about FDA's fraudulent drug approval process. You will also discover FDA's financial ties to drug companies and the corruption going on in the agency. And finally, you will learn about drugs approved by the FDA that cause severe side effects. The FDA is the oldest consumer protection agency in the United States. It was not known by its present name until 1930. In 1905, the American Medical Association created a system for controlling drugs. The year after, President Theodore Roosevelt signed the Pure Food and Drugs Act. The same year, the FDA's modern regulatory functions began. The goal of the FDA is to protect public health by ensuring that drugs are safe. The FDA also regulates our food, cosmetics, and products that emit radiation. The FDA also looks after the manufacturing, marketing, and distribution of tobacco products. The FDA's Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, CDER, reviews new drugs. CDER goes through a specific drug approval process. It has 3 stages: preclinical, clinical, and finally new drug application, NDA. The first one is preclinical. In this stage, the drug company discovers a new compound and then tells the FDA about it. And that's the beginning of the approval process. The preclinical stage is the drug maker's discovery and screening phase. The drug manufacturer has to determine the toxicity level of the drug by testing on animals. Researchers then find out how safe and effective the new drug is. The drug company then submits an investigational new drug IND application to the FDA. This application has some basic facts about the drug and a plan for human testing. The FDA then verifies that the planned clinical trials will not harm humans. And then it moves the drug to the next phase, which is the clinical study phase. In this phase, drug makers test on human subjects. Clinical trials have 3 phases of their own. In phase 1, the goal is to discover what the drug's most frequent side effects are. Usually 20 to 80 participants are part of this trial. In phase 2, the drug maker tries to discover the drug's effectiveness and how the drug works in people with a particular disease or condition. And then the FDA studies the short-term side effects. In phase 2, there are usually a few hundred participants. In the final phase 3 stage, the drug company continues to test the safety and efficacy of the drug in a larger number of people. Manufacturers also experiment with different doses in combination with other drugs. Phase 3 trials usually have more than 1,000 participants. Once the clinical trials finish, the drug company submits a new drug application. The NDA includes animal and human data. This report also has information on the drug manufacturing process. After the drug company files the NDA, the FDA has 60 days to review it. The FDA looks at the research submitted by the drug company before the NDA. And the agency also looks at the drug's proposed label. The FDA also has to make sure that healthcare professionals and consumers get the correct information. And finally, the FDA inspects the drug manufacturing facility. The FDA is supposed to regulate drugs on the market. But the most shocking thing is that the agency doesn't make its own clinical trials. That's the responsibility of pharmaceutical companies. The FDA only reads these studies and then decides whether to approve the drug or not. The only thing the drug company needs to do to get a drug approved is to show that their drug is somewhat better in 2 placebo trials. A placebo is a fake treatment such as a sugar pill. Drug companies can easily manipulate their own studies. If they want the results that they want, They can easily tinker with the data and hide bad side effects by using a large sample size. They often cherry-pick data to make the drug look better than it actually is. The company only needs 2 trials that stick. For example, if they do 1,000 studies and only 2 of them show that the drug is somewhat better than the placebo, the FDA approves the drug. One example is Eli Lilly Pharmaceuticals. The company conducted 20 studies to prove that the antidepressant drug Prozac was safe. Only 3 studies were submitted to the FDA for approval. But what the company didn't mention was that 7 other trials were failures. The FDA denied Eli's approval for Prozac. Once the company sent the 3rd data submission, the FDA finally approved the drug. Eli Lilly used statistical manipulation and repackaging of existing data to make the FDA approve the final trial. Manipulating study data is normal. Drug makers can use many legal ways to manipulate FDA rules. Companies can hire a team of writers, statisticians, and editors to repackage trial results. According to the law, drug companies have to submit all trials, but most don't. Many trials may be missing on the final report. Companies can conduct them in countries with little public oversight. Therefore, it might be impossible to know if they ever existed. It's naive to expect that the industry will perform honest research. If the industry was honest, it would compare its drugs with active placebos or let independent organizations perform its trials. Because they can make their own trials, they often add bias in the design of the trial. Academic investigators such as the FDA have little or no input in the trial design. The FDA has no access to the raw data. Only company employees have seen the actual data. The drug industry hijacks clinical trials for marketing purposes. If they allowed the FDA to do independent research, then almost no drugs would be accepted. Most clinical trials are industry-sponsored, both in Europe and the United States. They decreased from 63% in 1994 to 26% in 2004. Now, private companies or contract research organizations, CROs, run those trials. Some of them also work with marketing and advertisement. In the 1980s, marketers became louder and more aggressive. Salespeople with no sense of science or medicine took over clinical research. Science became more about marketing than health, and professors ended up as promoters. What we have today is not science but scientism. It's the religious belief that profit goes before safety. What's even more disturbing is that most prestigious journals have a severe conflict of interest. The major income from most top journals come from reprints of studies. Drug companies often order reprints if the journal publishes a positive study. Therefore, they can't be too critical of industry trials. If the peer review is too critical, that may cause the journal to lose $100,000 of profit and can make it harder for them to meet their end-of-year budget. There are too much conflicts of interest at drug agencies. When the industry is the judge, it's really hard to regulate them. We should have an unbiased third-party entity that should do the testing, not drug companies. If we allow drug companies to do their own clinical trials, they can just manipulate the studies and thereby get their drugs approved. What's even more disturbing is that many FDA regulators have financial conflicts of interest with the drugs they test. One example was Lester Crawford. He approved Boix, a Merck drug. After resigning from the agency, he became senior counsel for Merck's PR firm. He eventually received a fine of $90,000 when he was charged for falsely reporting he had stock in companies regulated by the FDA. Members of the advisory committees also worked for both sides. In the late 1950s, Henry Welch was chief of FDA's antibiotics division. He collected more than $250,000 in private fees from companies. There are also other cases of bribed FDA officials that approve drugs. People who get money from the industry cannot advocate for the patients. When there are honest FDA scientists that find serious harm in drugs, they often get intimidated by their superiors. The FDA has accepted the safety data it knew were fraudulent. If the FDA can't be 95% certain that a drug will kill you, it will let it on the market. The big demise of the FDA started in 1992 with the Prescription Drug User Fee Act. It allowed drug companies to pay the FDA for its services. With the money from Big Pharma, the FDA could hire more medical scientists to deal with the drug application load. Today, FDA receives the majority of its drug review funding from Big Pharma. It's the same industry it should be regulating. Drug companies also have people on the FDA's board of directors and can therefore influence their meetings. When the FDA receives a payout, it's a big conflict of interest. Because of the industry funding, the approval rate for drugs has skyrocketed. In 1988, the FDA only approved 4% of new drugs. 10 years later, it was 66%. And by the end of the 1990s, 80% of the drugs introduced on the market got approved by the FDA. The FDA was also last to withdraw several new drugs in the late 1990s when they were already banned in Europe. A big shortcoming of the FDA is that the clinical trials that they should monitor have short time frames and can't determine the safety of drugs. These trials often last several weeks or months. It's therefore hard to detect the most severe side effects of drugs. Another problem with clinical trials is that drug companies often use healthy participants and not sick patients that the drug company targets. Even if a team of experts analyzes a drug before approval, it's almost impossible to find all bad reactions. Some dangerous adverse events occur after several years. More than 2 million Americans suffer from severe side effects due to FDA-approved drugs. About 100,000 people die every year because of prescription drugs. Not everyone reports about adverse events of the drug because it's voluntary. The FDA may request post-marketing studies to follow up on the safety of the drug, but the agency seldom does that. In 2012, a study found that FDA's recall system isn't enough. The FDA only issued notices for about half of Class 1 recalls from 2004 to 2011. Class 1 recalls are the most serious ones and often cause death or severe injury. What not many people know about the FDA is that the organization has no legal authority to enforce a drug recall. Only the drug company can do that. The US pulls about 4,500 drugs and devices from the shelves each year, and these drugs are FDA approved. Reasons for a recall can range from packaging issues to life-threatening injuries. The FDA can recall human and animal drugs, medical devices, vaccines, blood and blood products, radiation-emitting products, transplantable human tissue, animal feed, cosmetics, and food. Over the years, the FDA has done some serious blunders. The agency has approved drugs that later showed that they had severe side effects. One example is Quaaludes. Quaaludes were sedatives used as sleeping aids between 1962 and 1985. Patients that took these drugs became manic, had convulsions, vomited, and some people even died. The drug was also extremely addictive. Today, Quaaludes is considered a Schedule I drug like heroin and LSD. By the 1970s, Quaaludes became a popular street drug. In 1982 alone, there were 2,764 reported emergency room visits. Xylot was a drug that went on the market in 1975. It treated ADHD and ADD by stimulating the central nervous system. But the drug had a major issue. It caused liver toxicity. There were 13 cases of acute liver failure reported to the FDA. 11 of these cases resulted in death or liver transplants. Even if the reported incidence of harmful side effects were quite low, it's not unusual that the actual number is much higher. Darvon or Darvocet was on the market for 55 years as an opioid pain reliever. The drug caused severe heart problems in patients. The drug killed 2,110 patients between 1981 and 1999 alone. But the FDA did nothing. It was only in 2010 that the FDA made a recall of the drug because a clinical trial showed that the drug altered the heart's electrical activity. This was a synthetic form of estrogen marketed to expecting mothers who wanted healthy babies. The drug company claimed that the drug prevented spontaneous abortion, miscarriage, and premature labor. But the drug had serious side effects. It caused cervical and vaginal cancer, and there were also reports of birth defects and development problems in fetuses. The drug also increased the risk of breast cancer, and some women died of it. There was also a risk of cancer in the child and increased risk of infertility and pregnancy complications. Some women also experienced early menopause. About 5 to 10 million mothers and female fetuses got exposed to this. The drug got finally banned in 1971. Voix was an anti-inflammatory medication intended to treat arthritis. It was the subject of one of the most extensive recalls in history. After its approval in 1999, over 20 million people took the drug. The following year, Merck recalled the drug. It was one of the most widely prescribed medications of 2003. The FDA also approves chemotherapy drugs that kill many cancer patients each year. An Australian study showed that chemo drugs were only 2% effective in treating cancer. Tamoxifen is a drug approved by FDA that blocks estrogen, a female hormone. Certain types of breast cancer use estrogen to grow. According to the World Health Organization, tamoxifen is a human carcinogen, which means that it causes cancer. The drug also has over 24 health-destroying side effects. But despite that, hospitals still use it as a first-line treatment for certain types of breast cancer. The only time the FDA seems to regulate something is when they try to stop natural remedies. The organization has suppressed many alternative treatments for cancer such as oxyherbs, Gizimaf, Latril, antineoplastoms by Stanislaw Brzezinski, and other natural remedies. But when drug companies make dangerous drugs, the agency does nothing. It's obvious if you look at the evidence that the FDA is a shield for big pharma and doesn't care about people. Drugs can never heal your condition, only mask it. If you want to improve your health, you need to discover the true cause of cancer. Only then can you take the right action steps to fix your issue. You can visit our website cancerwisdom.net to learn how to treat cancer with natural remedies. Watch our free Cancer Crash course to learn the cause of cancer and how to deal with it. You will also find out more about the corrupt medical industry and why you shouldn't trust chemotherapy, radiation, and surgery. I will provide a link to this course below this video. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe and like this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.